Are you ready for a snack break? Afternoon Snack is the cure-all to your dreaded afternoon slump. Join me, LK, an avid snacker and armchair history and culture buff, uniquely qualified to provide you with that brief distraction you didn't know you needed. Honestly, is snacking even good for you anymore? I'm not sure, but you're not in the market for more than a little treat anyway. Boss just slacked you 8 times? No worries. This will only take a few. So stop slacking and let's get snacking. Seriously, leave them on red for 5 and take a breather. If you find yourself scrolling through LinkedIn and craving a little more substance as I do, this show might just be for you. Join me for a bite-sized musing you can chew on for the rest of the day. Grab that scone and an espresso, and let's get snacking. Welcome back, my snackers. You are here on The Snack. This is your bite-sized podcast for all things cultural and historical, and I am, of course, your host, LK. Today being Halloween, it's time to celebrate, and I would like to take this as an opportunity to look back on one of the scariest and most iconic horror films of all time, which happens to also be turning 50 this year. And I'm talking, of course, about The Exorcist. Now, The Exorcist was released during pretty turbulent times here in America. This is the year 1973. The country was in the midst of an oil crisis, leading to long lines and rationing, and a lot of frustration, fear, and anxiety among the general population here. And then we also have, on the other side of the coin, the Watergate scandal hearings being well underway this year, which led ultimately to the resignation of President Richard Nixon. Not to mention hip-hop being born in New York City and lots of other interesting developments that helped shape kind of the course of culture and history ever since. Now, the timing couldn't have been more ripe for the ultimate scary movie. And this is a movie that was based on a novel. It was a novel that was written in 1971. And The Exorcist tells the story of 12-year-old girl who becomes possessed by a demonic entity, and her distressed mother, played by the incomparable Ellen Burstyn of Requiem for a Dream fame, for example, seeks the help of 2 priests to perform an exorcism on her daughter. Now, The Exorcist was a huge commercial success, not surprisingly, becoming one of the highest grossing films of the 70s. And let's just remember, the 70s also included the release of the first Star Wars movie in 1977. So being a high grossing movie in the 70s was a pretty big feat. But it was just as famous for the extreme reactions that it provoked in movie theaters at the time, with reports of people fainting, vomiting, and having anxiety attacks being included in the coverage of the release of the film. Now, despite the visceral reaction that some people had to the scariest moments of the film, reviews were excellent, and The Exorcist actually earned 10 Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture. It also took home Oscars for the Best Adapted Screenplay and Best Sound, and every horror fan knows that sound has a big, big role to play in creating suspense and terror in horror movies. So winning that award is kind of a testament to the spooky creators of the film, to their commitment to the art of horror. And the success of The Exorcist has since spawned wave after wave after wave of satanic and occult-themed horror movies in the 1970s and beyond. And it, of course, spawned numerous sequels and prequels of varying quality of its own. Now, the original still stands head and shoulders above the rest. And I have to think that's mostly due to, one, of course, the screenplay based on the novel, the incredible acting talents of both Linda Blair and Ellen Burstyn, who I mentioned, combined with William Friedkin's masterful direction, and who could forget that haunting score featuring the song Tubular Bells. Now, interestingly, and worth noting, the success of Tubular Bells also kickstarted the career of Richard Branson and his label Virgin Records, which was brand new when the song that Michael Oldfield composed was signed up on the label. To this day, I really consider The Exorcist as one of the scariest movies ever made. with images like the head spinning being permanently etched in our pop culture consciousness. And for horror fans, I think The Exorcist really set the bar high, that few other movies have been able to reach in terms of getting under our skin in a lasting way. Because 50 years later, we're still seeing the influence of this movie anytime we watch something about a creepy kid becoming a vessel or medium for evil forces. Now, the other piece that I wanted to acknowledge, and I would be remiss if I didn't, is the meaning and importance of The Exorcist to Georgetown University. So, 5 decades ago, the innocuously named M Street steps served as a convenient shortcut for Hoyas heading to the car barn, which I think Hoyas will know what that means, and making their way between M and Prospect Street. Now, 50 years later, they are fondly, or perhaps even infamously, known as the Exorcist Steps by almost everyone. And the film is also part of Georgetown's history, with anyone who ever comes to tour the campus pretty much going to get their picture taken on the Exorcist steps. And it just so happens that about 300 Georgetown University students were extras on this film. I have to say, as a Jesuit college grad myself, go Greyhounds. The campus imagery in this movie really takes me back to my own college days in a way that makes this movie extra creepy. So that's it. That's all you ever needed to know about The Exorcist, the eternally chilling classic that still scares me every time I watch it on Halloween. I want to hear your thoughts on this iconic horror film. Did it scare you? Did you think it was ridiculous? Were the performances compelling? How about that soundtrack? And just remember on Halloween to say to yourself, I ain't afraid of no ghosts. Please don't forget to give me your feedback on the podcast. This is my last call to action today. I would love to hear your thoughts on the topic and format of Afternoon Snack because I'm currently producing this in beta, and your opinion will help shape the future course of episodes. Thanks so much for joining me. Hope you don't get too scared tonight.